Alright, time for a video. And, okay, this was from outside. It's been outside all winter. I've had some of these left over in my dad's yard, so I went and I found them all. And I got a bunch of these nodules that are kind of dicey. It's Georgetown type stuff. I don't know if it's going to be all cracked. This side looks okay, but you never know what's going to be in there. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what we got. It's probably going to be a mix of bad stuff and good stuff. Obviously. Yeah, very snappish. What is snappish? Unpredictably break in half kind of stuff. I can already tell, but it may just be because of the flaws in the stone, the natural flaws, the cracking that has to do with the original spall or nodule, or spodule as I sometimes call them. And I don't know exactly if it is natural. It could be damage from the quarry, because a lot of these pieces of Georgetown that I got were quarry waste, where they were actually going for the limestone, and this is the Georgetown is mixed in with limestone. So when the machinery separates it, it kind of puts pressure on it and crunches it and crushes and stresses out the stone. So it's not predictable. Yeah, sometimes it has internal stresses, sometimes it has actual cracks. I will look periodically around to see if I can notice any of these cracks anywhere and the weird stuff going on in the stone. And hopefully I can eliminate that stuff carefully when I'm trying for the biface. When I'm trying to make the biface. Okay. Yeah. It still looks good on that side. That looks good. Okay. Now, while I'm here in Vermont, I can actually work on more things, different kinds of things, not just flint knapping, but I can do archery here more easily. That's the advantage. The disadvantage is I have less time to do those things, as far as the segments of time that I allot to doing them. Like, I used to be able to spend all day on one thing, basically, when I was at my house. At my dad's house, I can spend 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, maybe even 30 minutes or 45 minutes when I'm, not watching him. So I can do more things. I just have less time in the blocks of time that I have to do them. All right. So I'm going to be trying to do the flint knapping a little bit faster than normal. I was able to take my time before. See what I mean by snappish? This kind of stuff, I wish it would hold together better. It might be because there's a concavity right there. If there's a concavity in the workpiece, yeah, you're going to have that issue where it snaps right there at the concavity. But in some cases, the stone's flexible enough that it'll go right over anyways and be just one big flake. So this is what I mean by snappish. It'll break easily if there's any kind of disadvantage to the flake. Which, it matters when you start getting thin. Yes, it matters a lot. When you start to thin it down and you start to cry because it's not holding together and it always snaps in half on you and you don't know why. A lot of times it's the stone. If it's a snap in halfish kind of stone, it's going to make your life miserable. Yeah. It's not always the case, that that's why you're snapping them in half, but it could be that's what's doing it. And there's no amount of beating yourself up over the head with a baseball bat over that issue when it's actually the stone that's working against you. Okay, it's not flexible enough to do what you think you can do. Okay? And for those of you who don't nap, don't worry about it. It's just FYI. It's something that you'll not ever get just from watching the video. I do have to tell you about these things because, you know, how are you going to know? How are you going to know if the stone is snappish and halfish or not? Unless I tell you. It's just going to look like you're not doing it right. Yeah. That's what it's going to look like. And some of the wise guys, I always comment, I know what the wise guys are going to say. They're going to say, I say you're not doing it right because you're not doing it right. It has nothing to do with anything else. That's it, period. Yeah, sometimes I'm not doing it right. Yes, that's true. Do I blame it on the stone? Oh, yes. Even though I know I'm not doing it right, and that's the reason why it's messing up, I'll still blame it on the stone. Yeah. Of course. Now, sometimes I do it to be a wise guy, to be funny. Sometimes I do it because I'm actually, you know, sincerely thinking it's a stone when it's not, because I don't know everything. But most of the time I try to figure it out, and I hope I don't say it, or I hope I don't guess too much why certain things happen. That's one of my issues with answering questions is, how do I actually know why? And is there any nuance, or is there any exceptions? Because yeah, it could be that, but maybe not in this particular case because it's a little bit nuanced. What is nuanced? There's other factors in there, like there could be some weird internal stresses that I don't know anything about. What's internal stresses? That means there was pressure on the stone before I started breaking into it. Like in nature, there's a twist. It was twisted in nature for a long time, or it's under pressure of some sort. And it developed some sort of weird difference in the stone between the top and the bottom, or something got cracked, or there's internal stuff going on where it almost broke, right? But it didn't quite break, but there's still some effects in the stone from the pressures. The pressure can cause heat to increase. Pressure can be like fatigue pressure. It can be like constant flexing within nature. The temperature changes could cause flexing, and in engineering it's called fatigue failure. It fails not because it reaches its breaking point right away. It fails because it's been bent back and forth so many times that it'll crack. Right? And you don't know, let's say that this part of the nodule was broken off. You don't know how much damage there is in the areas where the crack happened. You know, there could be a lot of weird, I don't know, differences in the consistency of the stone right where the crack happened because of the different forces. And there might be invisible cracks that you really don't know about. I know that's a weird thing to think about, but you just can't see the cracks. You have to look really closely. They're not invisible, right? But it could be micro cracks or some weird things going on that are really, really small. You cannot see. And yes, it affects it when it starts to get thin. So thinning is not just a problem in knowing how to remove the flakes. It's a problem in the properties of the stone as well. Yeah. If you're having problems with thinning, it could be that it's not just skill, it's the stone. Okay. Yeah, I want to get that out there. Because some guys they think thinning is everything. Thinning is everything. Your skill is reflected in the thinning. Your authority as a flint napper or your expertise as a flint napper is tied to thinning. Everything's tied to thinning. And when you display something, unless you're displaying something thin, you're not a real quote-unquote napper. And if you're not thinning with certain tools I won't mention, you're not a real napper. And that sort of thing. Everything ties back to thinning. Well, there's problems with that because not everything can be thinned. Not all materials can be thinned. It might look like the person thinned a material that is impossible to thin. And therefore, you go, wow, that's skill. Well, it could be just using a piece of stone that's a fluke, or something that's not a fluke, but it looks just like a non-thinnable type of stone, but he managed to thin it because it's not that type of stone. It just looks exactly like it, but it's not it. That sort of thing. So the moral of the story is, don't get hung up on thinning. Yeah. And don't, just because somebody can thin something down doesn't mean that they are, how should I say? They are, I'm trying to be nice. I probably shouldn't be nice. Doesn't mean they're an expert, so to speak. It could be they're just working with good material. It could be they're just obsessive. It could be that the only things they show you are their greatest successes and never their other normal successes, etc., etc. Okay. You're just saying all that so you don't have to make them thin. Yeah, I know what the wise guys will say. You're just saying that because if you don't get it thin, you can just make an excuse. Yeah. I'll let you know if I'm making an excuse. I'll say, yeah, that's just an excuse. I'll try to do that. You know, if I'm making an excuse, I'll say, yeah, just making an excuse. But what I'm trying to convey is something related, you know, information related to how it was made in the past. How did they actually make those so thin? Was thinness something that was like pounded into everyone's head with that particular type of point style? What was it? How did they get it that thin, and for what reason, and what kind of mindset is it? That's what it's related to. Yeah, it's all going to tie back to flint knapping. I mean, how it was made. There's many factors in how it was made besides just the tools. It's the napper. It's the tool stone. It's the weather, believe it or not. Yeah. I'm trying to think, was this easier to reduce? Because this was sitting out in the ice. This was literally sitting on some snow just before I started the video. It has water in it. I did not dry it out with a turkey roaster at 200 degrees for 24 hours or anything like that. It came straight from outside. It's been exposed to the weather all winter here in Vermont. I'm sure there's water within it. Do I notice any difference being cold and icy? I don't notice any difference. No, I don't. In fact, it's the same old. I mean, I just napped this just like everything else. I didn't notice anything. It's snappish, right? I'm afraid to get it thinner than this, but I am going to try to get it thinner. But yeah, I don't notice any difference. Now, maybe I'm not sensitive enough to notice the difference. That's possible. Maybe I'm lying to myself. I don't know. can I not know if I'm lying to myself? Well, you can deceive yourself if you have a strong opinion that, if I had a strong opinion that the weather has absolutely nothing to do with the properties of the stone, then I would ignore any sign of the weather having something to do with the stone. I don't dismiss it. I mean, it could be having an effect. I just don't notice anything. Truly, I can't really feel a difference. Now, it might be napping easier. I really don't know. I have to be able to measure it somehow in the summer and in the winter with water in it, dried out. I have to find some kind of test to measure the breakability under all different conditions and figure out if that breakability with the test actually translates into a flint-knapping property. Because even though it might be very breakable or very chippable under certain conditions, it might not be all that nappable, even if it's breakable. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it can be chipped, but can it be napped well? If there is a difference between chipping it well and napping it well. And napping it well has to do with getting it down to a final thin shape, doing the notching and the sharpening. Shaping, notching, and sharpening. Those three things may not be reflected in how easy it is to chip with just a test, like chippability or the breakability or whatever. Yeah. I've tried different tests. Just simple low-tech stuff. When I first started, I tried to figure out how much pressure I was actually putting on these things. And pressure flaking, I did most of my tests with pressure flakes because I could kind of judge how much pressure I was using to create flakes. And some of the stuff I cannot create flakes pressure flaking. Some of them I can run long flakes. But I was in way over my head. And I'm still way over my head when it comes to testing. Because, it might seem like it's a good test to try it with pressure flakes in some areas. Or with some applications, like how to create bevels and stuff. Is it easier to bevel it under certain conditions and blah blah blah, that sort of thing? But I'm in over my head because I'm not quite sure if the test is actually relevant. Yeah. Anyways, so I stopped doing testing like that. So I'm just judging, mostly when I say that it's nappable or it's snappish, it's just a matter of feel with the particular piece. Yeah. That's the best I can do, unless I can get some sophisticated equipment. Yeah. You know me, that sophistication is going to probably drive me nuts. Well, we'll see. I don't even know if they've got anything. I'm sure the internet can provide some information on tests. There's one where there was a test set up with a marble or something heavy, a round marble hitting glass on the edge of a piece of glass to measure the flake creation at different angles of the glass edge in relation to the dropping marble. I think it was a ball bearing, like a copper ball bearing type of thing. I don't think they make ball bearings out of copper, but you know what I mean. It's a copper ball or something. They were dropping a ball of some sort of metal onto the edge. That's one test that I saw a long time ago, that they're basing a lot of these fracture mechanics on. But you're not going to get nappability from that, because the ball itself, we don't nap by dropping balls on the edge. By dropping little copper balls or steel balls, we don't drop them on the edge. So there's a whole different dynamic when you're holding on to a billet compared to dropping a ball on the edge. There's difference in follow through. There's difference in shock absorption. There's differences in the bounceability of the object you're trying to nap with. If you just let it free fall in midair, it's going to bounce off the edge. It's going to be a weird dynamic. It's not going to create the same kind of flakes in most cases. In some cases, you're going to get the exact flake, but that you would get with a flint knapping tool. But how do you know when there's, it's not for sure. For sure. Because the initial conditions are different. Yeah. Dropping a metal ball onto the edge is different initial conditions, and using a plastic mallet against aluminum rod like this as a horizontal indirect punch, and then holding it with a fleshy hand that shock absorbs at a certain angle, it's very different. You may produce the same flakes once in a while, but you can't rely on that too much. All right, anyways. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. That was good. See, these the terminations are feathery, which is good. I'm not getting a lot of bad step fractures toward the end. If there was going to be a bad step fracture, it probably would have happened right there, but it didn't. It's relatively clean. There is a little step, but it's not a detach, so it's more like a hinge. All right, there's not a undetached flake under that. It's fully detached. It just stopped and scooped its way up really quick. Yeah, there's no undetached portion of the flake. It's smooth within there. Okay. So that's the kind of terminations you want on a piece of stone that indicates high quality or high grade for nappability. All right, so it's 22 minutes. I'm going to stop there and upload this portion and then go inside and, make dinner or something and then come back. All right. I'll be back on the next segment. All righty. Okay.